Hi everyone, I've got a new free demo for you to play with today. This demo scene is something that I made last year just to experiment with the different PBR features in EEVEE, primarily in regards to getting nice reflections on surfaces, but I thought I might as well make it available to the rest of you because it's just been gathering dust for weeks. You can download it for free from the link in the description. So in this video, I'm going to run you through what's contained inside of the file, and we're going to take the time to talk about some of the lighting techniques you can use with EEVEE. We'll start off by talking about HDR Eyes. If you're going for realism and want a well-lit environment, then these are incredibly valuable for you. The way you add HDR Eyes to your scene is by using an environment texture node inside of the world nodes in the shader editor. You then plug this into a background node, which is then plugged into the surface input of the world output node. The contents of the scene will react to the light provided by the texture. And the good thing about using the world nodes to do this is that we can make all sorts of adjustments to the color data and preview the effects in real time. For example, I could place down an RGB curves node and make the color more like a misty morning. Okay, now we're going to talk about reflections. Because EEVEE is first and foremost a rasterization engine rather than a path tracing engine, reflections are never going to be completely accurate and they will always fall short when compared to cycles. One place in particular where you're likely to see some errors with the reflections are where reflective objects are close together, such as where these spheres are touching the ground. One of the things you can do to remedy some of the issues causing these situations is to use a reflection plane. Without them, the reflections at the base of these objects will not look correct, and we can see this if I toggle the visibility of the plane. The way you place down a reflection plane is by going to Shift A, then Light Probe, then Reflection Plane. You want to make sure you position it right. If the 3D cursor was at the world origin, then the plane would be placed at a Z value of 0, and in this demo that would put it just underneath the ground plane, and that will give us this dark boxy effect. So what you may need to do is make a slight adjustment to the position of the plane, so it's just slightly above the surface. And you'll notice that immediately we get the correct results. But this isn't the only issue with reflections in EEVEE. Notice that when rotating the camera to put the small sphere in front of the large sphere, the small one will disappear from the reflection of the large sphere. There's not a lot that can be done about this, so you just need to be aware of the limitations of the rendering engine. Settings to control these types of reflections in EEVEE can be found in the render settings under screen space reflections. Now scrolling up, ambient occlusion and bloom are best used in moderation. They are essentially ways to fake extra lighting effects. Ambient occlusion will darken the areas where objects are close to each other, and bloom will create a bleeding effect where there are high intensity areas of light. If we swap over to cycles, you'll notice that there is no bloom effect. This is typically something that's added afterwards, such as with the compositor, and it's worth keeping in mind that there's also no single method for implementing a bloom effect. Strong bloom effects are usually a dead giveaway in comparison renders between EEVEE and cycles, so if you're going for realism, I might actually suggest leaving it off entirely and adding it afterwards to give yourself more control, but for the sake of having a pretty demonstration scene to show you, I'll leave it on for the time being. Now when talking about physically based rendering, roughness is the key to reflection. If you want to create a reflective surface like this, but don't want to bother finding a seamless texture with a decent resolution, then you can do it procedurally with the material nodes. I can show you this if I click on the ground plane and go over to the object node tree in the shader editor. By using a combination of generated textures such as noise, Musgrave, and Voronoi, you can build up a variety of modifiable patterns, which you can then pass to the roughness value of a principal BSDF shader, and this will give you the nice reflective effect. Using noise textures is a good way to get these slight imperfections, and we can mix between them to control the influence of each generated texture. And using a math node set to multiply is a good way to control the overall intensity of the effect. Chances are the default color management settings in EEVEE are not going to be perfect for your scene. If you're having trouble balancing the final lighting for the scene, instead of trying to adjust all the light sources, it might be worth taking a look at the color management properties in the render settings. I often find myself increasing the contrast in the look drop-down menu. Again, this is nothing you can't do afterwards in the compositor, but one of the benefits of EEVEE is being able to rapidly prototype different results in real time. Another tip is that the false color option under View Transform will turn the viewport into what's essentially a heat map of light exposure across the scene. Of course, you don't really need this to see what areas of the viewport are the brightest, but it certainly makes the difference more obvious, so you can use this as an extra tool for balancing composition. Alright, now we're going to quickly talk about volumes. A principled volume node can be plugged into the volume input of the world output node in the world node tree to get a foggy atmospheric effect in the scene. Keep in mind that if you have an HDR Eye plugged in as the world background, then the volume won't affect that, so it might look a little bit strange as you're increasing the density, though the clarity of the reflection stays the same. Again, if you're going for realism, then use volumetrics in moderation. With a slight blue tint, you can simulate the presence of an atmosphere, but with a strong density value and color, the image will start to look more stylized. One thing to keep in mind though is that if you're using bloom and emission, you might need to adjust the intensity values of the materials to compensate for the volume. If you want to learn more about using volumetrics to create atmospheric environments in EEVEE, then I did a video about it last year that you might be interested in. Now before we close out this video, I just want to briefly mention indirect light bouncing and baking. You can use something called an irradiance volume to simulate lighting that's bouncing off the surface of other objects. This demo was not made to test those features, but I might cover it in another video. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about irradiance volumes, then there's an excellent video by Tutor4U that explains the settings really well, so I highly recommend watching it. Remember, you can grab this demo file for free from the link in the description, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Feel free to follow me on social media or join our Discord server to stay up to date. So thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.